would have happened? What would you have learned? Just checking in to make sure that we're not having any audio issues. Stephanie is telling us that we're cutting in and out. So if you're having any audio issues, would you please let us know in the chat? We want to make sure we're not having any technical issues. If I'm cutting in and out for you, would you let us know in the chat so we can make some adjustments? So a few of you are letting us know the audio is fine. If you're having issues, you might want to check your bandwidth, check your connection to make sure the issues aren't on your end. It looks like we have a couple. Tammy's telling us my audio is not doing well. Stephanie says it's improving. Check your bandwidth, check your connection, make sure the issue is not on your end. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started, and we're going to start with a polling question for you. So you'll see that pop up in just a second. And the question we're asking is, are you using video in the instructional coaching process? Yes or no? We'd love for you to tell us a bit more about that in the chat, of course. If you're using it, you can tell us in the chat more specifically how you're using it. Are you using it with all teachers in the building, a certain number of teachers, your purpose or objective or goal for using it? So you can certainly expand on the answers. And we're going to let that poll populate and then look at the results of the poll. And that's going to, again, help us to get some data and understand who's with us today in our audience. You can certainly expand on that answer, the yes or no answer. I see Maureen is telling us she's not currently using video, but she wants to learn more. She wants to begin using it. Stephanie's telling us it's now part of the district appraisal system. Teachers are required to use 1 to 2 videos and then meet with a colleague, principal, or instructional coach to provide feedback. Nancy's telling us she's using it to observe teachers for their formal observations. All right, I think we have enough responses now. We can go ahead and post the results of the poll. And we can see that about 55% are saying that they're currently using video in their instructional coaching process, and about 48% saying that they are not currently. So we have a pretty good balance there. We're going to keep that in mind as we get started with our webinar today. And thank you for joining us. My name is Allison Burnett, and I'm the Director of Professional Learning for Sibme, the #1 platform for coaching and collaboration. Let me tell you that Sibme is an acronym, and it stands for Seeing is Believing Me. And at Sibme, we believe that whether teachers are being self-reflective with video, whether they're working with colleagues and using video in a collaborative way, or being coached via video, we improve most quickly when we see an accurate picture of our reality. And that's what video provides. So it's that objective, unbiased look at reality. At Sibme, we're aligned with the research of Dr. Jim Knight, and we believe in his quote, video is the single most powerful technological advancement in professional learning in our schools in our lifetimes. And we're pretty excited to feel like we're part of that with the Sibme platform. Sibme was created by educators and for educators, and we believe that while technology is important, it's not the only ingredient to make schools successful. There's never just one thing. I've been in education for over 30 years, and it's always a combination. It's rarely the result of one thing. We can have and use technology all day long, but if we don't have a purpose for using it, and if we don't have a plan and a process for using it, it's unlikely we're going to get the results that we're looking for. We've asked Dr. Goree to participate in our webinar today because she has experienced success with video, and in a large part, that's due to an unwavering commitment and belief that teachers grow with video, ultimately impacting student achievement. We've asked her to share her purpose, plan, and process today with you, and to do that, we're going to cover 4 main objectives. We're going to get to meet Dr. Goree and hear more about her expertise with video. We're going to explore how video has contributed to her coaching process and campus's success. We're going to ask her to identify best practices for coaching with video, the who, what, when, where, whys, and hows. And finally, ask her to talk about her use of the Sibme platform in her coaching process. With me here today is our guest, Dr. Tonya Goree. Dr. Goree is the principal of Francone Elementary School in Cypress-Fairbanks ISD. That's a district that's just north of Houston, and it's the 3rd largest district in the state of Texas. I want to congratulate Dr. Goree for a few things before we get started today. First of all, congratulations for being the Elementary Principal of the Year in Cy-Fair for the 2015-2016 school year. Also, some impressive data recently released from the Texas Education Association regarding the growth of your school, which we're going to talk about in greater detail today. And finally, I understand that you recently got word that you're going to be a presenter at the ASCD National Conference in March, so you'll be going to Anaheim, California for that conference. Dr. Goree, welcome and thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
Let's go ahead and get started, and let me ask you to tell us a bit about yourself, your expertise, your experience, and your background.
Well, I would also like to welcome everyone to the webinar, and it is my hope that you walk away with a clear understanding of what this process offers for your teachers and for you as an instructional leader, and the impact that it definitely has on the growth of students and on the growth of teachers. This is my 26th year of experience. 15 of those years have been in administration, 7 in my current role as a principal. This is my 2nd campus where I've served as principal, 5 at my first campus, and 2 here at Francone. A little bit about Francone: it is a Title I school with an economically disadvantaged population of about 86%. And of course, as with many campuses with large economically disadvantaged populations, there are always academic struggles and behavior concerns. So our goal is to always make the greatest impact on academics and on behavior as possible.
Thank you, Dr. Goree. So let's go ahead and jump into our 2nd objective here. And let me begin by asking you, why did you decide to use video as part of your coaching process, and how has it impacted campus success?
I discovered the benefits of video coaching about 5 years ago during my doctoral program when I read the Measures of Effective Teaching project. There was a section entitled Better Feedback for Better Teaching. That inspired me. It inspired me to add video to our coaching process and make it a standard practice on our campus. We were already doing some random coaching with teachers as needed, but once I discovered the impact that video provides, because it allows teachers to see themselves through the same lens as the coach, our entire process changed. Using video has allowed us to have an unbiased opinion in coaching. It validates the coach's perspective, helps teachers open up to receiving feedback, normalizes those conversations. Actually, in my opinion, video coaching is the only way to have complete truth in the coaching process.
So can you tell us a little bit more about how video impacted the campus success?
Well, first of all, when looking at the practices that are happening in the classroom, when a teacher is allowed to or able to look at their practices, you can't dispute what happens in the classroom when it's on video. Inevitably, there will be changes or adjustments made. That creates teacher success. When you're able to see the things that need to be changed and make those changes, teacher success happens. Because of video, the adjustments are purposeful, enhancing those practices that are going well and changing those that are not going so well. Video coaching is for teachers at all stages. I want to make sure that everyone is clear that it's not just something you use for struggling teachers, but video coaching is for teachers at all stages of development. For master teachers, video coaching encourages them to be more analytical, more reflective. It keeps them from becoming complacent. The process pushes average teachers to the next level, and it works for struggling teachers for obvious reasons. Both behavior and academics, as I mentioned in my opening, that's always our goal, to look at ways to have a great impact on behavior and academics. And both behavior and academics were positively impacted at Francone. There was a 90% reduction in the number of classroom disruption referrals. And as you see on the screen, a 68% decline in our overall referral rate. Because of the amount of success that our teachers experience, our attrition rate improved tremendously. If you could go back, Allison, to the other screen, thank you. Our attrition rate improved tremendously. In years prior, the attrition rate had been very high, 42% the year prior to us introducing this, and that was pretty much the pattern over the course of the last few years. But last year, because teachers felt successful, because we had so much success with what was happening in the classroom, I believe it contributed wholeheartedly to our attrition rate being 3.6. Academically, we experienced double-digit gains on all state-tested content areas in every grade level. And for the first time, Francone earned 3 distinction designations, which are gold stars for performance. These are awarded by the state of Texas, the Texas Education Agency, when a campus performs in the top 25% of its comparison group. So the impact to our campus has been enormous.
Thank you, Dr. Goree. What would you say to school leaders who are not using video as part of the professional learning process?
I would actually just ask a question. What are you afraid of? School leaders are also instructional leaders. In my 15 years as an administrator, there is nothing that has impacted the improvement of classroom instruction in a more valid way than video coaching.
Let's take a moment now to do another polling question. This seems like a really good spot to get some input from our audience. So we're going to ask you to reply to that question. If you're not using video, what do you fear? Is it teacher buy-in? Maybe it's not only the teacher won't buy in, but perhaps there's a concern that teachers might actually push back. Maybe your fear is not having adequate technology or lack of instructional coaching expertise. Maybe not even having instructional coaches on the campus. Maybe your concern is one of time, or you fear supporting yet another initiative. Maybe there's a concern that you have a lack of technological expertise. So if you'll reply to our poll, and if we've left anything out, if there's something else that you fear we haven't identified, please feel free to chat about it. And if you'd like to extend your response in the chat, we'd love to see that as well. We're going to give the poll about a minute to populate. And in the meantime, Dr. Goree, let's just do a little anticipation here. Let's just say, for example, somebody identifies that their fear is lack of teacher buy-in. What would you say to somebody who expresses that as their fear?
Well, I believe it's in the way that you present the information to your teachers. This is, as I mentioned, this is my second campus. My first campus, I was there for 5 years. So around year 2, we introduced, year 2, year 3, we introduced the video coaching process. And it was well received by everyone on the campus. There was no hesitation, there was no fear, because it connected to our goal, our purpose, and there was always a why. We're doing it for a purpose. When I became the principal of Francone, I had no background knowledge of anyone as far as the teaching staff or the leadership staff, but I knew that the impact video coaching would make on improving the academics and behavior for this campus. So it's part of our culture. It's a campus norm. It's no different from expecting teachers to use the balanced literacy approach or expecting teachers to reinforce instruction through the process of small group instruction. It is a part of our campus norm, and it is just what we do here for the purpose of impacting instruction. So we were able to get 100% of the teachers to buy in. There was some hesitation, I'm sure, with the fear of how it was going to be used and what was the purpose. So that has to be part of your presentation. You have to make sure that that the teachers feel psychologically safe, that they really realize and understand it is not used for punitive purposes. The sole purpose is for growth. That's how you get the teacher buy-in. You present that information. You make sure that the goal and the purpose for using it aligns with your goal and purpose for your campus. So everything we do here is for that purpose, and video coaching was just a layer that was added to that purpose, and it is part of our campus culture.
So important. And as you look at the polling results, you'll see that teacher buy-in is actually 74% of the folks who responded said that was actually their fear. So great response to that. Let's jump to the chat for a second and then go back to our polling results, Dr. Goree. I'm seeing, for example, a couple of interesting comments here. And one is from Robin, who says she's an instructional coach. She doesn't fear buy-in from the teachers, but fears buy-in from the principal. What would you say to Robin?
I learned about video coaching in my doctoral studies, and I had to share it with my leadership team. I was not able to be a coaching team of one. I needed my leadership team to buy into this as well, because we had to buy into it in order to get the teachers on board. So there are a variety of things that you can do in order to make sure that your leadership team is comfortable with it. And one is the calibration. Coaching is not coaching if everyone's not skilled at providing what teachers need in order to improve. So if there's training provided, there's an opportunity to do book studies. There are a couple of books that we're going to talk about in this webinar that you can use. But it's sitting down, developing your plan, and making sure your coaches are trained. Fear comes from the unknown. And if you have the training and the collaboration among the coaching team, and you're continuing to grow and develop yourselves, then that fear leaves and you can move forward with this process.
Thank you. And if anyone else wants to chat questions in addition to the polling questions, Dr. Goree, let's just look at one or two more here. What would you say to someone who says their fear is not having enough time?
Well, we did video coaching using the traditional camcorder tripod, taking it to a classroom, setting it up, downloading it to the computer for the teacher, then handwriting or typing comments to meet with the teacher. We used that process for 3 years. And then we were introduced to Sibme last year. And the time factor is no longer an issue. Using the Sibme app eliminates the issue of not having enough time, because it's very convenient. Everything's all in one. It's very easy to use, and it eliminates, when you go into a classroom, you go into classrooms, period. You go, it makes what you normally do every day, going into classrooms, observing teachers, providing feedback, it makes that process seamless. So time is not an issue using the Sibme app. Time is an issue when you use the traditional form of the camcorder or whatever other resources that may be available, because this is an app that you have on your iOS device or your Android. It takes all of those extra steps out, and it makes it very convenient. So time is not a factor when using the app. it was a factor for us when we videotaped using a traditional model. But the process was so important, and I didn't know about the app at the time, but the process was so important, it was worth doing.
Thank you. Tamika is adding in the chat that they're currently using a traditional camcorder, and it can be very time consuming, no doubt. Let's go back to the poll for just a second before we go on to back to the chat. The last poll that I want us to respond to is those who are fearing video because they feel like it's yet another initiative that they're going to need to support. What would you say to that fear?
It's not an initiative. This is not an initiative. It is part of our campus culture. Again, when I mentioned it's no different from expecting your teachers to use a balanced literacy approach, or expecting guided math, expecting small group instruction. It's not an initiative. It is one of our campus best practice, one of the best practices we use on our campus. It is a norm of practice. I don't see it as an initiative. It was never introduced as an initiative. It was introduced as a way to help us get to where we want to be academically and behaviorally. And everyone makes adjustments and monitors and makes adjustments to the things that they're doing in order to improve and have a greater impact. That's how video coaching is utilized on this campus. It makes an impact on what we do. It's not an initiative.
So jumping back over to the chat for a second, Carrie is asking this question, Dr. Goree, do you have any feedback on any additional training that our early education coaching team could use before starting our video coaching?
I do suggest that because it's very important that the coaching team is well versed. I would suggest using. There are a couple of books out there. The Building Teachers' Capacity for Success, the Jim Knight book, Focus on Teaching. You could do that as a book study with your coaching team, so that everyone can build their capacity to coach. And it's about the constant training. I've been using this process for 5 years, but every year at the beginning of the year, in June or July, we start with training for the coaches. What are we looking for this year? What concerns do we have? What went well? What are the things we want to work on to make sure that we continue to build our capacity and we're able to provide the feedback that's needed for the teachers? So that is a very important question. Coaches do need to be trained and calibrated before going out to coach teachers. The entire team needs to be on the same page.
Thank you, Dr. Goree. And then there's one last question in the chat before we move on. So this is from Robin. It sounds like the results you showed at the beginning took approximately 3 years to come to fruition.
I'm sorry, repeat that.
Oh, sure. So Robin is saying in the chat, it sounds like the results you showed at the beginning, meaning the data we showed on one of the earlier slides, took approximately 3 years to come to fruition.
The data that was showed at the beginning is the data for last year, my first year here at Francone. That's actually first year data. That's not 3 years worth of data. As I stated in the beginning, I was a principal at a campus for 5 years. That's where we started using video coaching, and we had great results there. We were very successful with that process. My first year here at Francone was last school year. The data that was presented is what we earned last school year. It's what happened last school year. The change in discipline referrals and the increases in the content areas on the state assessment, all of that happened in 1 year.
Thank you. So we're going to move forward now into our next objective. And folks, please feel free to continue adding your questions into the chat. We will have a question and answer as we finish up, before we finish up today. But we certainly are enjoying your questions and responding to them. So our third objective for today, and this is really the one that I've been most looking forward to, is asking Dr. Goree to identify some best practices with coaching with video. And here for me is where the rubber meets the road. This is where we have to get really, really concrete. And one of my favorite quotes, Dr. Goree, is that people change when they see the next step. So I believe that sometimes it's just telling people what that next step is so they can understand how to proceed. So let's go ahead and get concrete with this. Discuss for me, if you would, the scope and sequence of using video as part of a professional learning process at a school, and maybe take folks who are new to video through your process as it maybe starts in June or July in preparation for a coming school year.
Okay, and I'm going to reiterate some things that I said previously as I go through these steps. So if there are questions, please add them to the chat. So what's important to note here, just before we start, before we start sharing the scope and sequence, is the role of the coach and the role of the evaluator never crosses. I have a 9-member coaching team. There are 4 administrators and 5 instructional support personnel who are members of our coaching team. But the 4 administrators, because we also coach, we never cross the lines between a coach and an evaluator. I don't evaluate any teachers that I coach, and that's on purpose because coaching is about improving. There has to be a relationship of trust. It's strictly about growth, and in order to build that trusting relationship, it's necessary that those lanes never cross. However, we do tape our formal observations as evaluators using the Sibme app because it adds that layer of integrity to the observation process. It's a fidelity check for me as an evaluator. So looking at the start of this in June and July, that's training for the coaching team. That is very key. Everyone may not have coached before, or their coaching experience your coaching team may have experience that's at different levels. So it's imperative for you to for your coaching team, to work together and identify what good instruction looks like. It's important to define the non-negotiables. What are your non-negotiable instructional practices on your campus? Training for the coaching team, as I mentioned earlier, can happen in a variety of ways. The way we train is through the use of book studies. We did Building Teachers' Capacity for Success by Pete Hall and Focus on Teaching by Jim Knight, the 2 books that are on the screen. We use both of those books in order to enhance and develop our coaching process. It's no different from going to staff development every year. We go to staff development every year in order to improve our practice. The same thing happens with coaching. You must improve your practice every year. In August, we present this process to the teachers or train the teachers depending on where you are. Are you presenting it for the first time, or are you doing training on what layers you're adding for the new school year? Everything is related to the campus vision or the campus goal. We do nothing without a purpose. Everything is related to the campus vision or the campus goal. You must use data to support your purpose. It's not presented as an option for our teachers. It's a part of our campus climate. It's a norm here. This is what we do to impact instruction. When you're presenting this to the teachers, it's important to note that that you troubleshoot every question that you believe a teacher may have. If you're introducing this for the very first time, think about your staff or think about what questions would come up and troubleshoot all of those questions in your presentation. Answer them before they can ask, because you don't want to run into an issue where someone's asking a question that you haven't prepared for. You want to identify how important this is and the necessary purpose that this process happens on your campus. Our practice consists of a minimum of 3 rounds of coaching. The first round, the most critical round, teacher self-reflection. I believe one of the greatest forms of professional development is self-reflection. Therefore, during the self-reflection process, this is where perception meets reality. Those things that you perceive to be happening in the classroom, are they really taking place? That's what happens during the self-reflection round. Rounds 2 and 3 are with an assigned coach. Again, this is a school-wide expectation and all teachers participate in this. It's no different from your guided reading expectations or your balanced literacy approach or your small group expectations for pulling small groups. It's no different from that. It is an expectation. It's part of our practice. It's part of our culture. In situations where teachers need more support, we do what's called heavy coaching, and you go beyond those 3 rounds. So it is for growth and improvement. That is the understanding here. So sometimes you have 3 rounds. Sometimes you have more. 3 is the minimum. In September, teachers are allowed to do their self-reflection process, and we have a form, a Bloom's form, that I believe is going to be available to participants of this webinar that teachers use to reflect on. October through mid-November is round 2. From October 1st through mid-November, we do round 2, and that's with your coach. And then the end of November, allowing for holidays and things of that nature, the end of November through February, early February, is round 3. March through May, we're adding videos to the library, and in the Sibme app, there's a video library that you can add videos to, and anyone on the campus can access those videos and see the great practices, because teachers don't get to see what's happening in other teachers' classrooms. They don't get to see the great things that their colleagues are doing because they're teaching at the same times most often. So there's a video library where we upload videos and teachers have, and we put them in folders and categorize them, so you'll know, oh, if I want to go see a great lesson on inferencing, I can go to the video library and take care of that. We do that March through May, and heavy coaching is still going on if needed. For the sake of psychological safety, my coaching team models every expectation that we want the teachers to follow. So we videotape ourselves and do self-reflection when conducting meetings, leading planning sessions, or modeling lessons. When a lesson is modeled by a coach, it is our practice to add reflective feedback and post that video in the library for teachers to review. We also have to be self-reflective, and we model that and allow teachers to see us modeling that by putting our self-reflective videos in the library.
Thank you, Dr. Goree. So do you want to talk a little bit about the value of the coaching tracker to monitor a program?
So the coaching tracker, because we want to make sure that we are using this process with fidelity. Our guidelines for coaching is that teachers receive feedback within 48 hours. So within 48 hours of recording a classroom lesson, teachers need to or must receive feedback, because the coaching process doesn't work if it's not handled in a timely fashion. And there has to be there's only 1 week allowed between the videotaping and the post-conference. So we do a pre-video conference and we do a post-video conference. But the coaching tracker allows us to see, and that was one of my favorite features that I was going to talk about. But the coaching tracker allows us to monitor, or allows me to monitor, when videos are uploaded and when feedback is provided. So that's a great feature for Sibme, to make sure that all coaches are on track with what needs to be happening and when it needs to be happening.
Thank you. And so let me just ask this last question before we go to the chat, and that is, let's just say that there's administrators or coaches who are listening today who are thinking to themselves, they'd really like to start this coach process in January. They realize that this semester, all the professional development days are already spoken for. They feel like it's just, they're not prepared to begin now, but they're hopeful that maybe in January they could begin. What would you say to those folks who are thinking of January as a start date? What could they be doing now in preparation for that?
Start calibrating your coaching team. Again, if your coaching team is not well versed in that practice, then the process is just having a conversation. It's not coaching. There's a big difference between coaching and having a conversation. So I would start with calibrating the coaching team. Get one of those books, start reading those books, having those conversations about why you wanted to use this process. Develop a plan to introduce it to the staff that includes the why. Also, making sure you've identified the purpose for using this process with your team, with your teachers, and therefore it can be communicated throughout this process with fidelity. Set a time frame for round 1. If you're going to start in January with round 1, then make sure that teachers are aware prior to that day or prior to January that this is coming. We're going to do round one, give them, because it's the second semester of school and you would want to impact instruction as immediately as possible, I would make round one 30 days or less, because that'll be the entire month of January to do the self-reflection piece. And then I would only add one additional round with a coach because of the sake of time. So I would definitely do all the steps that I mentioned that we start in January and continue through the end of the year. I would do all of those things. I would just take out one of the meetings with the coach, but definitely do the self-reflection and definitely do the second round with a coach. And it is imperative that there's calibration with the coaching team. So the coaching team should start developing their skills immediately.
So let's go to the chat. Nancy's asking a question of how many teachers does each coach have in their caseload?
Roughly 6 or 7.
Okay. And Robin is saying, what number of teachers is a reasonable caseload for this process? She currently has 10, and she's in school buildings only 3 days per week.
Using the Sibme app, 10 is a very that's a very doable number of teachers. That's a workable number. The old way of using that we video coach, 10 would have been too many. But because Sibme is so convenient, you can record 2 or 3 teachers in a day. Now we do have a limit. A minimum amount of time. Our minimum amount of time in a classroom is 30 minutes, because we want to capture enough video that we're able to provide adequate feedback. We want to have a good span of time so we can see transitions happen and all those other things, because again, we're addressing academics and behavior. So with the Sibme app, it's not unreasonable to say that you would coach 10 teachers.
That sounds like a great segue into our last objective for today, and that is to ask you how Sibme is helping you with the coaching process. And I'm just going to ask you to tell us how you've used video. I know you've been using video as part of your coaching process for a number of years now, but only recently, in the past year, did you start using Sibme. So can you tell me how Sibme has helped you, and I know you've been sprinkling that in a little bit, but how it's helped you to be more effective with your coaching plan?
Well, Sibme has made the process of video coaching extremely efficient. It blends our workflow. It adds value to what we were already doing. Again, pulling out that video, that camcorder was very taxing, but Sibme has made all of that process extremely efficient. It's a time saver because the process is so efficient. It eliminates the roadblocks of technology. It's an app. No roadblocks to technology. The old way we coached was very cumbersome. We spent hours trying to download videos to a teacher's computer, and then we would download it to our computer, type comments on a separate document, and then meet with the teacher and hand them that document. Through the use of Sibme, we can actually add time-stamped comments to the video, and teachers have the opportunity to review that information prior to coming to the post-video conference, and they can respond to those comments on the video prior to that. It kind of takes away some of the anxiety of coming to a meeting and not knowing what the coach saw or what the coach provided feedback on. Sibme only takes a matter of seconds to upload. So the process is very effective. My coaching team has made the comment several times, and I mimic this, that we would be at a loss for coaching without Sibme. Since we've had the experience, we never want to go back.
Mm-hmm. You've already mentioned a couple of these features, but can you tell us about some of your favorite features on the Sibme platform?
Well, if you haven't already picked up on this, the ease of the app. It's very important to understand that there are so many features in this app that are easy to use. Anyone with an iOS or an Android device can record themselves. There are sync notes that allow you to record, to type and record at the same time. So while you're in a classroom, the video's recording, and you can have a device and you're typing, and those comments are popping up on the video. You're also able to do the timestamp comments, which is very important to me. And I understand that there's a new feature that allows there to be audio comments, because sometimes when you're typing things, just like we say about email, even the perception can be different. So there's an option now that you can record your voice, you can record audio, and it will upload to the video. So a teacher can click on the video, it gives them a highlighted mark, and that mark tells them where the comments have been posted. And they can click on that mark, and it will give audio feedback or written feedback. And then of course the coaching tracker, which we discussed earlier.
Thank you, Dr. Goree. So what would you say to a school leader who still believes that they can piecemeal things together, maybe the DIY, do-it-yourself approach, instead of using a platform like Sibme? What comments might you make to them?
Time is a precious resource, and as I've stated many times throughout this webinar, Sibme is very time friendly. It is very easy to use. So if you're serious about impacting the growth of teacher growth through video coaching, why would you want to run the risk of technology failing to meet your needs? If you need a robust platform, Sibme provides that. There are multiple factors that help you accomplish your goal for video coaching. So there may be others who are thinking they can piece things together and get the same result, but I'm a witness that that's not possible, or that has not been the case for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have a final question and answer session with Dr. Goree, but first a couple of things we want to say in the meanwhile, and that is we are going to be hosting a webinar next month on November the 17th. That guest is going to be Justin Bader, who's the director of the Principal Center. And our topic is going to be the big reveal. So we're excited at that point to reveal a game-changing feature that we think is going to transform the way that we do classroom observations. We also, before we get to our final Q&A, we want to encourage you to feel free to sign up for a 30-day free trial of Sibme. If you look at the bottom of the screen, there's a phone number you can contact. We have our email, we have the website address, and we'll be posting the link to the 30-day free trial in the chat as well. And before we get into the question and answers, we do want to say that the resources that Dr. Goree has provided and referred to today is listed here at the bottom of the Q&A page, and we'll also post that link in the chat. And finally, those of you who are listening and registered for today's webinar, we're going to send out a link to the recorded webinar so that you can, we saw some chats about that, you can access it as well at a later time. Maybe you're listening today as the principal, but you want your leadership team to hear this webinar as well. So we'll be providing you the link for that. So let's go to our final questions and answers. Is there anything we haven't responded to, any concerns or questions that you have regarding any of the information that Dr. Goree has shared with us today, that you have one last question before we sign off for today's webinar?
There's a question on the screen. I'm seeing a part of it. It says, or I'm seeing the question, are the coaches doing this after hours? Our coaches are not doing this after hours. This actually happens throughout the school day. And because it's an app that you carry with you, a coach or a teacher can open the Sibme platform, and you can read or watch your video and read your feedback while in bed watching television or traveling. As long as you have internet connection, you can access the Sibme app. That is the ease and convenience of the app. So it's not an after hours process. We videotape throughout the day, and You can sit anywhere in the building or be anywhere in your personal life and open the app and view the videos and respond to feedback or provide feedback. So it's not an after hours process.
Very good. Are there any other questions that you have before we end today's webinar? Some of these questions are really more directed at Sibme, not really at Dr. Goree, so that's fine. And we'll continue to answer those questions that are part of the process of the Sibme platform. Does anyone have any other questions specifically for Dr. Goree in reference to anything that she's talked about today? So David, so we're responding to some of the questions that are in reference to the Sibme platform, which is fine. Dr. Goree, folks are beginning to sign out and thank us. And I just want to say that I met you almost a year ago. I remember you standing up in a meeting and you were passionately speaking about the power of video in the coaching process, and that was before you even started using Sibme. I have to tell you that I became a fan that day. I've been a fan ever since. It's been wonderful listening to you share your expertise with us today and your time, and I want to thank you sincerely for doing that. That will bring an end to our webinar for today, and we will continue to chat answers to your questions. Remember, and I'm going to go back to the slide so that you can see our phone number, you can see a way to email us, you can see the website, and you can see the link for the 30-day free trial.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that brings to an end our webinar for today. We hope we see you back in November when we'll be speaking with Justin Bader, the director of the Principal Center, for what we're simply calling the Big Reveal. Thank you.